You are listening to the Hiking Radio Network, where we talk the walk with shows by hikers about hikers for everybody.
Mighty Blue on the Appalachian Trail, the ultimate midlife crisis. Join Steve and his guests every week as he staggers from Georgia to Maine.
Hey guys, good to be back with you all again on this, our 450th show of the podcast. This is Mighty Blue on the Appalachian Trail, the ultimate midlife crisis, and I'm your host, Steve Mighty Blue Adams. We've got another packed show for you today with 4 interviews and the next part of my reading of Emily Leonard's book, Happy Hiking. First up, we've got Larry Ripari, or Bird. Larry recently completed his Triple Crown of hiking with a thru-hike of the Appalachian Trail. Larry is an endlessly interesting and thoughtful guy. I think you're going to enjoy our conversation. After Larry, I had intended to catch up with the 2 guys in our Mighty Blue class of 2024 who are near, or in one case at, the end of their thru-hike. I have got Sloggy on today, but I decided to go with another catch-up from Michael Garsh, or No Rush the Elder, as he's got some news to share. We'll be following Professor Milkshake next week as he gets to Katahdin. Then, between those 2 guys, we've got a friend of mine who I met during my 2019 thru-hike. Diane Seeger, or Lady Di, came back to Damascus to do a bit of hiking, then bought a big house, opening Lady Di's B&B in 2020. She also has some news to share of her own. And between all of this, I want to tell you a few thoughts I've had for the future of this podcast. I'll be wanting your input on this, so please stay tuned. So let's hear from this week's main guest, Larry Ripari, or Bird. We've got another Triple Crowner and recent AT finisher on the show today. This is Larry Ripari. Is that right?
Yep.
Larry Ripari, or Bird. Hey, Larry, thanks for coming on the podcast.
Okay, happy to be here.
When we spoke the other day, I asked you how long you've been hiking. You referred to yourself as an adventurer. And I know that hiking has taken up a lot of the last 4 years for you. What other adventures were you doing prior to turning your attention to the Triple Crown of hiking?
I was doing a lot of motorcycle riding. I got a lot of buddies in Detroit, and we explore Michigan, try to get out and see some of the surrounding states, just all on the motorcycles as far as we can get away on a long weekend. Prior to that, I mean, on a smaller scale, I'm all about finding like a cool experience in the city. I do live downtown Detroit, so
nice.
I'll just wander around the city and see what's out there. I'll bring my camera with me and take photos. That's kind of where the adventures are.
So being a motorbiker, you obviously had a bandana ready to go on the AT, I presume, did you?
Yeah.
Always drive around one of those, yeah. So you eventually turned to hiking. Did you ease yourself into it, or did you set your sights on the Triple Crown straight away? How did you come to this?
I sort of eased into it. I didn't at first, when I got into backpacking, I didn't know about the Triple Crown. I didn't know about long trails. And somebody had mentioned a movie, and in the movie, it was actually Into the Wild. The Pacific Crest Trail was mentioned in it. And that's where it all started. I looked into it and was like, oh my gosh, there's these 1,000-mile long trails.
Isn't that an amazing revelation? When we read about it, we think about it, think, how can they do that? Because one of the things that really got me straight away was how narrow the damn trails are. I mean, it's one long ribbon of walkway, isn't it? Mm-hmm. And we all know that hiking a long-distance trail takes quite a bit of money. How did you plan this Triple Crown financially? Because it's not a cheap endeavor, is it really?
No, it's not cheap, but if you plan accordingly, you can end up not having to really worry about your money. But that being said, I did work a ton to make it happen.
Yeah, I think you said you worked your ass off the other day.
Yeah.
That was a technical term.
Yeah, I actually worked at a meatpacking plant in the city, and it was one of those mindless jobs. But I told myself every piece of meat that I move or put in a box, that's 1 mile on the Continental Divide Trail. Wow. So I just, zoned out, and I would have music playing that would, make me focus on like the hike and like, this is all part of it. This is just keep working, put all the hours you can in, and before you know it, you're going to be setting off from the terminus.
So how do you work that out, though? Do you, as you didn't know much about it, had you done a ton of research? Did you know how much money you needed?
For the PCT, I actually thought that I could get away with about $4,500.
Wow.
Yeah, but that's not what I spent.
Shocker.
Yeah. I hiked the PCT in 2020, and I lost my job to COVID. So when it came time to apply for some of the COVID relief, I got enough COVID relief to comfortably hike the trail.
Nice.
Wasn't expecting that. I was still going to do it on a $4,500 budget. It just would have been really rough. But the CDT, I knew that meatpacking job, that was temporary. That was strictly just to save and fund for the hike. So when it came time to quit, I was more than happy to leave.
So what did you talk in terms of a budget then? What did you end up with spending on each, if you don't mind me asking? Don't be so precise if you don't want to, but roughly what did you spend on each trip?
The PCT was somewhere north of 10,000. I'm not exactly sure of the number because I was paying some bills and stuff still.
Sure.
The CDT was almost exactly $8,000. And I know that number because when I was at Glacier, I was handing them my money for the permit, and I'm like, I hope I got enough money to get home.
There is a budget.
Yeah. And the Appalachian Trail, I did about 8,300, I think. That was somewhere around there.
And that allowed you to do it in what way? Comfortably or quite frugally?
It was. I think I was able to spend as freely as I wanted. The last couple of weeks, you sort of just have to calm down a bit and make sure that you're not staying in hotels that are like $400 or $500 or anything.
Sure.
So yeah, it was all, they were all comfortable. There was never a time where I felt like, I should stop spending now.
And I presume that the CDT is cheaper because, frankly, there are less opportunities to get off trail, isn't it? Because basically, the way in which you spend money is you go into town. That's the problem, isn't it?
Yeah. And the towns along the CDT, they are relatively remote, so there's not much there to spend money on. So, yeah, I would say that the CDT ended up being the cheapest just because there's not a whole lot to spend your money on. You're walking most of the time.
So, where do you live, by the way? Where do you actually live? Detroit, you say?
Say that again?
You live Detroit? In Detroit? Okay. So, let's start with the first one, the PCT in 2020. So just because you watched the movie, that was the one you wanted to do? Or once you realised there was this long-distance trail network, as it were, did you look at what they were? And did you set out intending to do a Triple Crown?
I set out to hike the PCT only.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah. And the reason I chose the PCT is because I felt that with some of my experiences already, that I could take on the challenge of the PCT and be comfortable with it. But when I started the PCT, it really was, this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. I'll never get a chance to do this again. But I proved myself wrong on that one.
Funny how that happens, isn't it, really? Yeah.
Yeah.
And what sort of physical shape were you in when you got started?
I've always been, this is sort of my metric, but I've always been able to run a 10K in less than an hour. And I feel like if I get to a point where it's taking me longer than an hour to run it, I got to get myself back in shape. So I was in decent enough shape, but I'm not sure, I don't know how to gauge it. I could run, and I could run some distance, but that's about it.
It's not the same thing at all, though, is it? So did you find any deficiencies in your physical shape when it came to hiking?
No. I actually think that the mental and physical endurance of distance running translates well to thru hiking. Your body's going to adapt in different ways, but the perseverance that you can push your body and mind, that all transferred over to thru hiking.
Well, I think I know the answer to this because I think I've got a note from what you said about it in the CDT, but on the PCT, it starts in the desert, doesn't it? So
yes.
How was the desert? Was it what you expected it to be? Because many people have told me it's not what they expected.
The thing that surprised me about the desert was how green and full of life it was. And I personally loved the desert. I love hiking in the desert. I love setting my tent up in the desert. I think I adapted well to that environment. Even when I was getting kind of sunburnt, like sunscreen, it'll work, but sometimes you just don't have enough. And I don't know, I loved it. All the hard stuff that people complain about of the desert, I don't know, I think it's all great.
I've never met a person on here on my show who's done the desert that didn't like it. So, it's one of those things I've got to try one day. I know I'm running out of time, but I feel that one day it might be something I might want to do. And I think the PCT, and I think I've discussed this on the show before, has gotten progressively harder to hike from end to end, with massive snowfalls, swollen rivers and wildfires and so on. What sort of snow year was it like in 2020 for you?
I think 2020 was the last great year to hike the PCT.
Oh, really? Interesting.
Yeah, it was a very low snow year, and I had a later start. So I started in mid-May.
Oh, right.
So any of the snow that was in the Sierras, I think I stepped on snow 10 times maybe through the whole hike. And as far as fires in the north, I think I had to navigate around a 50-mile closure. But other than that, we just had to keep moving north, and we were basically out hiking the fires. And
when you do a closure, as I understand it, the closure is told to you by the PCT. So therefore, the PCT is officially rerouted. Is that correct? Along that closure.
I'm not 100% sure. I know that the closure that we had to navigate around, there wasn't really an option to like reroute. We basically just had to miss that small section of the trail, unfortunately. So,
yeah, I wonder who the last people to have a real easy end-to-end hike, because there can't be that many who've actually done an end-to-end hike in the last 5 years, I suspect.
I believe people are saying that a true thru-hike of the PCT is kind of a thing of the past, with a connected footpath from terminus to terminus. Wildfire season just doesn't make it happen. It's not you can't do it.
So, not having done it myself, I don't know. So, how do you encounter a fire? I mean, you're walking along and you see smoke, and because I know when I landed in Reno, when I was going to do the John Muir Trail once, the smoke was coming from 50 miles away. So you kind of knew it was in the air then. What was the experience like for you?
So. I'll use the CDT as an example because this was a good example for it. In New Mexico, they had a wildfire that connected with a controlled burn fire, and it got out of control, and it was massive. And we could see it from the top of the mesas.
Wow.
And eventually we would get service, and when we got service, our Far Out apps would update, and we would get news updates as well that says, there's a fire closure in this area. You need to navigate around mile marker here to here.
Right.
So Far Out actually was a pretty great tool as far as getting us the information we needed for the fire
and
closures.
Did you contribute as well? I mean, because I think one of the great thing about Far Out is the information you give yourself as well. So did you contribute to that as well?
As in what sense, like relaying information?
Well, make notes, relaying information yourself, because you probably had information some other people didn't have, or people come up behind you didn't have.
Yeah, I would try to tell hikers that I had met that I have their phone number and send it to them if they hadn't gotten it, or use my Garmin to try to reach other hikers that were in the area. But by the time we were informed, there's not really much else we can do to relay more information. So once we get the information, it's already getting blasted out there, and people are starting to figure it out. Right.
So you got there in the end. You touched the sign, which is a pretty fantastic effort anyway. But at what stage did you realise, I'm enjoying this. I want to do a little bit more of this. When was that moment you thought, the Triple Crown?
It was when I had told my girlfriend, I'm thinking about hiking the CDT, and she said, then you have to. And then I was like, well, if I do that, I have to do the AT. And she said, then you have to do that too. And when I had her support, it was like, okay, this is happening.
Blimey, where'd you get her from? Oh my God, that's tremendous. So she was quite a new girlfriend as well, wasn't she?
Yeah, we had been together for about 2 years at that point, 2 or 3 years. Yeah.
So, but she basically knew you. She saw you going away in 4 years. You went away 3 times.
Yeah.
Very cool. So you were going to do the Triple Crown, and the next one was 2 years later the CDT. You told me the other day was your favourite of the 3 hikes. Tell us why.
The Continental Divide has all the challenges that I was looking for in backpacking. It has the most dramatic landscapes, and the challenges that it throws at you, you really have to have your senses about you, and you have to know your tools, you have to know your kit and what it's capable of and what you're capable of to successfully hike through some of the terrain on the CDT. And those were the types of challenges I was really looking for, to really test all these skills that I've learned from the PCT and other backpacking adventures I'd gone on in Michigan. So it was just all the right challenges and a dramatic landscape that was always changing around you.
That's interesting. So had you decided or seen a movie or read a book about the CDT first and gone on the CDT first, do you think you probably would have been less prepared than you were for the remoteness of it?
Absolutely, yeah. I believe the PCT was a great way to be introduced to thru hiking for me, because I still got some of the social aspect, but I was also hiking alone most of the time. And when I realized I actually like the solitude of this, I was comfortable with accepting the amount of solitude that the CDT would throw at me too. But I don't think if I'd heard about the CDT first, I still probably would have chosen the PCT just off of what I've researched.
And we've not really talked that much about the CDT on this show for some reason. I don't really know why. So can you kind of give us an overview of what it's like as a trail? Because I've always felt that it seemed like the most remote of all the trails and the one with the most likely possibility of getting lost in a very big wilderness. Give us a taste of what it's like then.
It is definitely big, and the big skies and the landscape really shows that. But yeah, it's hard, and the terrain. I would say the terrain is slightly easier than the Appalachian Trail, but you have to, you're choosing which way you want to go on some of the side trails like the Gila River, but the CDT definitely has this overwhelming feeling of remoteness. When you're standing out there by yourself and you can see these vast horizons, whether it's on a mountaintop or in the desert, you really can feel that remote feeling of you are in the middle of nowhere, and it is constant. It is always present.
And were you by yourself? You say you want the solitude, but were you hiking by yourself most of the time, or did you tend to hike around other people?
I would hike by myself, just because my pace was at that kind of speed. But when I would set camp, it was usually with other hikers. I typically prefer to set camp with other hikers. There's, I'm not afraid to say it. There's a safety in that. And I know that when I camped alone on the CDT, rather than feeling alone, I felt lonely. And there's a big difference in that. Some nights were okay.
Massive difference, yeah.
Yeah, and there were some nights I would be outside of my tent looking at the stars, and I felt like I was the only person on the planet. So I would try to camp with as many hikers as I could at night, which was usually only like 2 or 3 other hikers. But the loneliness versus the alone time, I would say you can feel lonely quite a bit more on that trail.
And did you feel a similar loneliness on the PCT, or is that more of a social trail? I mean, I know the AT is a social trail, but the other 2 trails, I've always thought of the CDT as the least social, perhaps than the PCT. But from my understanding, is the PCT has a lot of those times when you are quite alone as well.
Yeah, I never really was able to feel the same way as I did on the CDT. I always felt like there was someone close by. I did have a small hiking family of 2 or 3 people. I hiked with one girl named Mama Cass for most of the PCT, and she was always nearby, whether she was a few miles up or a few miles back. But I never felt that I was, truly alone out there.
Right. So let's turn to the AT, because this show's called Mighty Blue and the AT. And that was this year. Oh, by the way, just before we get onto these, what were the dates for your PCT and your CDT? How long did it take you to do them? Because you hike at quite a good pace, don't you?
Yeah, it took 5 months for both.
All right, well, fine, that's good.
So for the PCT, it was 5 months, CDT, 5 months.
You're quite a bit quicker on the AT, because the AT normally is about 6 months, so you did pretty well there. Was this the one that you were least looking forward to? Because were you doing it just because it was a Triple Crown, or were you just not looking forward to so many people?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I don't think anyone's asked me that before, but I had very solid reasons for wanting to hike the PCT and the CDT, and the AT was the only one where I felt the only reason was just to get the Triple Crown. And there were some days where that just didn't feel like enough. And also, there was the big number of people, but that dwindled after about mile 500. Sure. There was almost nobody at the shelters anymore. But the AT was one where I just had a harder time remembering the why of why I was doing it. So I think probably least looked forward to hiking the AT of the three, even though it was still a fun adventure.
Yeah, I mean, funny enough, going back to what I mentioned earlier on, the order in which you do these things, had you tried the AT first, you might never have thought, I never want to do a bloody Triple Crown. So it may well be that...
It's possible, very possible.
It may well be this, when you do these things, you do it at the right time for you, so it kind of works out. And you did this, as I say, in just over 4 months from doing mid to late 20-mile days. Did you find it easier than the others physically?
Yeah. I think I found it easier to do the bigger mile days only because I was used to doing it on the CDT. The CDT really put a very specific kind of discipline in how I approach through hiking that wasn't there on the PCT. So I took that discipline.
Hang on, talk about that.
Oh, it was, when you're laying in your tent, do your map homework. Look at the map, study the icons, understand the terrain, what's ahead of you, and choose a route that's going to be the mileage you want to cover, and just stick to it. So I'd fall asleep thinking, okay, I'm going to wake up at 5 a.m., get on the trail before 6, and I'm going to hike 27 miles to whatever shelter or to whatever campsite. And I just put that same routine on the AT. So I'd set my route for the next day. I'd wake up, and the whole day in the morning as I'm doing my routine, I'm just telling myself, you got to do 27 miles, so you got to get moving. And it stuck with me all the way. So if there was a day, maybe a couple of days I didn't want to do all those miles, but I stuck with it.
I must say, interesting you say that. And I was in hiking in the UK earlier this year. I remember it back from when I was hiking the AT, that when I set myself an easier target, say in my case an 8-mile day as opposed to a 12 or 15-mile day, I took just as long to do the 8-mile day as I did the 15-mile day because I couldn't get motivated enough to get it done. Did you ever find that you were doing shorter miles and you found those just as difficult as the longer miles?
Only when I got north of the Whites. Yeah, the Whites, I really wanted to be able to continue to do bigger mile days, but I had to adapt to what the trail would allow me to do. So I went from doing 25, 27 miles, and then north of the Whites all the way into southern Maine, I was doing 15 to 17 miles a day, and it would take me all day to do those. And that's with the mentality of, short breaks and stay moving all the time, eat while you're moving. So it was really frustrating to only do 5 miles, and it's 11 o'clock in the morning, and I've been moving for 6 hours.
5 miles by 11 in the morning for me was a pretty good day. So I suppose it's all how you look at it. Do you feel, you've talked about obviously, or we've talked about the solitude and how you enjoy the solitude. Do you enjoy the community out there though, hikers in general?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I don't really know many people in my circle back home that do endurance stuff. Right. My brother and I are pretty close when it comes to that sort of thing. We've always been running most of our lives. But one of the things I was looking forward to when I got onto the PCT was I wanted to meet other people and see how they tackled this sort of thing. Right. And the thing that really blew me away was the the amount of difference in people that do this sort of thing. There's no lack of diversity. Anybody can do this.
Yeah.
Yeah, the social aspect I definitely do enjoy, but I think it has to be set against the solitude that I also enjoy for me to enjoy the social aspect.
And of course, the 100-mile wilderness isn't really a wilderness, but it's about as wilderness as you get on the AT. Did you enjoy that part of it? Because I know I didn't. The first time I kept going back to Monson for about 4 nights, which was ridiculous, and then I lift back into where I was the day before. But the second time I went, I did the whole thing, and I loved the wilderness. Did that strike a chord with you?
The 100-mile wilderness, it definitely felt like a wilderness. But I had set out from the beginning wanting to hike it in a certain amount of days. So when I see something that says hikers going forward, you should plan for 10 days. In my head, I hear, well, 100 days is only 25 miles per day, so it should only take me 4 days. So I was like, all right, I'm going to do the 100-mile in 4 days. And it was long days. I took very short breaks, and it was excellent hiking. It was just challenging enough, but just easy enough to put the big miles in, and it was incredible. It was some of the best parts of the trail, in my opinion. And
then, of course, you get to Abel Bridge, you go to Baxter, and then, of course, you climb Katahdin. By the way, did you stay overnight in Baxter, then climb Katahdin the next morning?
Yeah, my strategy for that was, because I finished the 100-mile in 3.5 days, and on my last day of the wilderness, it was a 15-mile day to Abel Bridge Campground. I stayed there, and the next morning I went and signed up for the Birches, and then at 7 a.m. I set off to go to the Birches Campground, and I stayed there, and then the next morning after that, after the Birches, then I summited Katahdin.
And many of us come into Katahdin after just the AT. We're still pretty emotional at that moment because for us it's the end of a long journey. For you, though, it was to signal the end of an extremely long quest, 8,000 miles, I think, in total, something like that, to do it. How were you feeling? Were you emotional? Were you glad it was over? How did you feel about it?
This was the first time finishing a through-hike that I actually cried when I touched the sign.
Oh, really?
Yeah. The other two,
What were you crying for?
I guess a lot of things, man. It was, I think I felt that part of me that needed to be complete. I think I felt that completion, and it was overwhelming. It was bittersweet. It was joy. Yeah, it was this just overwhelming feeling of like, you did it, you finished this big thing. Now sit down and like process it for a sec.
Enjoy it. Quite right. We're going to talk about that in a minute. What then happened after that? And just before we get onto that, with each trail, did you shake up your gear, or did it stay pretty much the same throughout? I know it's 4 years, and you may have to take things out, but the general setup was that the same?
The setup was generally the same. On the PCT, I went from the Sawyer Squeeze to the Katahdin Be Free. That was probably a pretty significant change. But my kit pretty much stayed the same. I used a variant of a Hyperlight backpack, but my tent, I had the same style tent. It was a 6 Moon design, had that on all three. And I used the same rain jacket. But yeah, my kit was pretty much the same. I switched out from the Explorer Plus Garmin to the Garmin Mini, and that was just to save some weight. But functionally, It was all pretty much the same kit.
Now, I want to come back now to how I first learned about you in the first place. And it was a post on Facebook, and I've got 3 questions about that. First, you wrote, and it's a longish paragraph, so bear with me. You wrote, "With this completion, though, comes the death of the hiker I was on these trails. My name was Bird, and it was an alias I loved and lived in for a while. I don't know how other hikers saw me, but I know at least as Bird I embraced this hiker trash life." Great expression, of course. Bird slept on the ground most nights in a tent, ate many large pizzas and drank a lot of Cokes, of course we do. Bird hiked over big mountains and through the rain and mud and into the late evening desert sun. Bird suffered hard days just to see the beauty in the backcountry. Bird was a through hiker who became a Triple Crown hiker. Now, as this chapter closes, Bird will become a memory. I'm going to ask you in a moment about why Bird is going to become a memory. But first, talk to us, because this is what I got from that. Talk to us about the power of a trail name and how you can make that person become whoever you want to make them?
Wow. Oh, that's such a great question. I think that the trail name can be more than who you were back home. And when you have something like that, you know, this different alias, it almost feels like you can make that person out to be whoever you want them to be. I would say that I've always felt like I was a pretty genuine and selfless person, like in my real life. And when I got my trail name, it was so close to who I was that I felt like it just needed to be who I was in real life anyway. And so I would try to be that, you know, genuine person and as selfless as I could on the trail. Yeah, so I think it's a way to, you know, especially if you're thinking about quitting, is this trail name, is this person, this new you on the trail, is this someone who would quit? Are you someone who would quit back home? Maybe you were sure. Maybe you would quit something in real life, but you have this new identity and you can say, no, this person here on this trail, this name, he wouldn't quit, so I'm not going to quit.
And how'd you get the name? Why were you Bird?
So it was.
Don't tell me you got skinny legs.
No, I mean I do, but no. My friend Mama Cass from the PCT, she, you know, my first name's Larry, so she was like, "All right, well, your first name's Larry, so Larry Bird, Larry Bird, the basketball player." I walk pigeon-toed, and I have a lot of bird tattoos. So she's like, "I think your trail name's just got to be Bird." So I was like, "Okay, nice. I like that."
When I thought about that question this morning, I thought about myself. You know, I'm Mighty Blue, and I know that I chose that name late. I gave myself another name first, which I'm not going to tell anybody, but I decided on Mighty Blue at the end because it was my soccer team in the UK. And that person is a different person to what I was. But I think it's the, and I've used this expression before, I think it's the best version of me. Mighty Blue is the best version of me. And I wonder if that's what was behind what you were saying then, that, you know, really you brought the qualities you think your best qualities to the trail, and you try to let people see those best qualities most of the time when you're out there.
Yeah. And that's not to say that with the death of, you know, the thru-hiker Bird that I was, it's not to say that those qualities go away, but sure. I just think that it was, in a sense, the best version because it incorporated so many of the things that I wanted to be back home, but could only really see myself being out on the trail. Like back home, I can't really show off. Like, you know, I hiked 27 miles today and it only took me this much time. You know, I wanted to be able to see that person in real life. And as Bird, I was able to do that and show those things, those parts of me off.
So do you think you'll take more? Do you think Larry has become more Bird, perhaps, and you've taken some of Bird back to your real life?
No, I think that Bird as the thru-hiker is separate from me in real life. Okay. Yeah, I think there has to be that separation in order for me to disconnect from the thru-hiker life, which was part of the plan all along. So yeah, I think that there is a difference between Larry in Detroit and Bird on the trail.
So let's get to that. Why is Bird going to become a memory, which I've never seen anybody say before, by the way?
It's partly to do with me not needing to have that closure of completing this thing, because so many people will do a thru-hike and then they just keep going. They keep doing the thru-hikes and they never stop. And that's fine for them. But for me, the significance of completing the Triple Crown is amplified knowing that it ends there. You know, when I touch the sign on Katahdin, I finished this grand adventure and now I can close that chapter and open up a new one. And by opening up a new chapter, it gives me something more exciting to look forward to, a new experience to jump into. And it had to end that way. So, you know, the death of the thru-hiker Bird from my life is a way to put all of that, you know, into a story and a memory that I can tell people about, but not feel like I have to continuously relive it
Sure.
in real life.
Good for you. I know a lot of us are kind of almost stuck on the trail. It's part of us. I'm going back there again next week, funnily enough, and it's part of us. And it's just, I think it always will be. Although I'm older than you, so I've got less time for it to be me. And just one last quick question. In the prior paragraphs, the one I read out, you wrote, I found what I was looking for out there on these long scenic trails of my America. What were you looking for? Do you know what you were looking for? It must be more than solitude.
Yeah, solitude, obviously, but I was looking for a challenge that put my endurance to the test. I'm not sure why endurance has always been such a present thing in my life, but it has been. It's been there as soon as I started long distance running with my dad. It's just been like, it's like the base of all physical things and mental things is if you have strong endurance, there's like nothing that can stop you. And so testing my endurance was one, but the whole thing that started it all was when I wanted to hike the PCT, I wanted to know that I was the master of my time and nobody else. So
Sure.
When I set out to do it, it was, I'm going to spend my time the way I want to spend it because it's the most valuable thing I've got. So if I can do that, I can do anything. And that was the mentality on the PCT. This is my time. I'm going to spend it how I want. And that's kind of how the CDT creeped back in because, well, I want to do the CDT, so you should do it. Be the master of your time and do these things.
Yeah, that's cool. That's very cool. And the AT was just the add-on to make it a Triple Crown. By the way, I love your AT summit picture of you wearing a crown, which is pretty damn cool. Now, I know there are no more long through hikes. Oh, very nice. Yeah, it's just show that doesn't come across so well on a podcast, by the way.
Oh yeah.
just show me the three patches. Well, I know there are no more long hikes in your future. I know you're still going to be hiking locally, so you're not giving up hiking in general. So, all I want to say is I've really enjoyed talking with you. I think you're an interesting guy to talk to about this, and I think whether you hike long distance trails or not, be prepared to put out there in the world about what you know, because it's a valuable lesson for a lot of people. So I appreciate you coming on and sharing your story with us.
Thank you for having me.
Appreciate it. Cheers then. Bye.
Goodbye.
I really enjoyed that conversation. Larry's an articulate, thoughtful guy who considered his answers and shared his great achievement with us. And I loved what he had to say about the power of a trail name. It's a surprisingly important choice that we make to accept such a name or name ourselves, so don't treat it lightly. And Bird is retiring. Larry's been that guy. Now it's time to move on to new adventures. And for those of you wondering about the cost of these hikes, $8,000 to $10,000 for each hike is quite a commitment, isn't it? It cost me less when I went, but I've certainly noticed price rises over the years, particularly in the hostels, so those numbers seem pretty accurate to me. Just before we start talking with our Mighty Blue Class of 2024 members, I wanted to let you all know that I've been thinking of ways to slightly restructure the show. Please pay some attention to this, as I'm going to be asking for your input. At the moment, it's taking me forever to put these shows together, and they're often running way beyond the original length of my shows, often going past the 90-minute mark when the original intention was to go no longer than, 45 minutes to an hour. With several interviews to prepare for, record, and montage when editing the show on a Wednesday, I've become a bit overwhelmed with the amount of time it's taking for me to put these together. I want to keep the main interview each week. It's the part I most enjoy, and really, I think it's the glue that holds the show together. So that leaves the middle bits and the book reading at the end. The middle bits have never been formalised. In fact, they've changed over the years quite a bit, but the Mighty Blue class of whatever year has given me too many interviews to get through. So the first possible change would be to either drop the middle bits or just confine myself each year to a woman and a man, or maybe just one hiker, then follow them for however long they survive out on trail. The other alternative is to stop my book readings. I'm going to finish Emily's book, but I'd love your help in deciding whether or not this is a feature of the podcast that you want me to continue. So these fairly unformed thoughts need a bit of help from you. I'm not ruling out an entirely new section, but I'd love you to write to me and tell me how you want to see the show develop from here. Many of you know my phone number, so if you do and you don't like to email, feel free to pick up the phone and share your thoughts. Otherwise, just write to me at steve@hikingradionetwork.com and you'll be helping me to take the podcast forward. Now, our latest successful member of the Mighty Blue class of 2024. Here's Sloggy. And as you'll hear in the beginning, we had a few technical snafus, but it all worked out in the end. Here he is.
Here we go. We know this works.
Yeah, that's right. Hey, how are you, Bobby?
I'm doing great.
Well, first up, of course, many congratulations. This is the day after the night before, as it were. It's the day after your Katahdin day. So first off, congratulations. And second, a confession on my part. I was kind of hoping you'd go up on the Monday because I knew I wanted to see the movie Lord of the Rings in the afternoon. And I thought you'd get up there by about 11 o'clock in the morning. And when you hadn't, I thought, sod it, I'm going to go to the movie. And then you called me when I was in the middle of the movie. Or you texted me, rather, that you're up there. So I apologise for not being there to record you. There's that. And I like to fess up straight away. How'd it go?
It was awesome. Well, I'd have been there much sooner, as you just mentioned, but I had multiple family members join me, so it did slow me down a little, but it was well worth slowing down for when we got to the summit.
Of course,
so it was amazing. Yeah.
So we're going to get you to talk us through the day in a minute, but let's go back. You were in Monson when we last spoke with the 100-mile wilderness to come, and that's very much your home territory, isn't it? You know, you more than virtually anybody else we've had on the show, you've done the 100-mile wilderness more than anybody, I think. Once again, how different was it to do it as part of a thru-hike?
It was very different. First of all, the night before we started, I had 3 members in my family, a husband and wife from Vancouver Islands, and then my buddy Solar from Florida. And I told them to kind of chart out what they wanted to do for mileage, because, you know, what I was going to be able to do for mileage this year was going to be way different than what I've done in the past. So I had them do it, and then obviously asked me for some local knowledge. But I mean, they put together, 5 days. I usually do it in 6.5.
Right.
And they put the days together. I'm like, oh boy, I've never gone from there to there in a day. But it was pretty, I don't want to say simple, but I was like, wow, this is, way easier this year with those 2,100 plus miles under my belt. So it was really cool, actually. It was a lot of fun, and sometimes I just do it by myself. So it was fun to do it with people that I'd been hiking with for a while.
And was you mentioned the 2,100 miles under your legs, which more than helps. Let's admit. How long have you been feeling that? Pretty much since about 300 or 400 miles in. You can walk anywhere, can't you?
Yeah, I think so. It's funny. People have asked me like, "Oh, you don't even get tired." I'm like, "Well, no, you still get tired going up, the mountains and the climbs, but you go faster and you just don't have to stop. Like you can just carry on a conversation or sing a song or whatever. That's the difference. But you're still tired, but you do it like, just for a quick example, there's a small mountain. It's 1,500 feet called Nasuntabun in the 100-mile wilderness. It's a beautiful view of Baxter, of Katahdin. And when my daughter and I used to do it, when she was younger, it would take me about 50 minutes to an hour to get up it from the very bottom. And I timed it the other day, and I didn't try to go fast or anything. I was just chatting with my buddy Solar, and I did it in 27 minutes. So I'm like, oh boy, that's way quicker.
You become almost superhuman. I mean, you feel so fit, you can take on anything, don't you? How much food did you take for the wilderness? Did you stay in it the whole time, or did you take 5? Did you get a resupply? How did you work it out?
Yeah, so it worked really well. I had always taken all my food for the 6 nights, 6.5 days. But
Sure.
the manager kind of that takes care of the 100-mile wilderness section for the Maine AT Club, Brad Dean. He's kind of in effect my boss because I'm a maintainer in his section. He offered to do a food drop for us at Joe Mary Road. So we did that, and I ended up with so much food. I mean, I was cleaning out my food bag this morning. I still had food left over, but so that was kind of cool. So not only could we do more miles, or I could do more miles than usual, but I'd never done a food drop, and that was really super nice of him to do that for us.
So you've been on such home territory when you've been doing this for the last, I don't know, several hundred miles, I guess, as well. Is it the same enjoyment, or did it all feel new to you?
It felt new to me, and it upped the enjoyment right at the same time. Because I went a long time. I mean, I went probably over 1,000 miles before I saw anybody in person that I knew. And that was tough. As you know, I mean, you've done it. I mean, it's hard to not. I mean, FaceTime and the like, and on the phone. But so as I got further north, my optimism that I was going to finish, just because I did see one of my buddies in Northern Virginia that I grew up with, and then I saw a ton of friends in New Hampshire, and then of course when I got into Maine, I had all kinds of things. So it really ramped up, and it all felt new, and everyone was just so happy to be part of it. I mean, the enjoyment that I saw other people get was just awesome.
I would imagine it was actually, yes, because your people were seeing you. They've seen you do this before. They know you do this. This is what you do. But this is a whole new level, isn't it? So when you got off to, is it called Golden Road? I think is it Golden Road when you get off?
Yeah,
off the
right before the A-Ball Bridge.
Yeah. Did anybody meet you there, or A-Ball Bridge?
No, we didn't. We didn't do anything there, and that was kind of strange because usually my wife or a buddy or something picks me up at the A-Ball Bridge store. And a couple cool things that I had never done. I had never done the section of the AT from the A-Ball Bridge store to the Birches.
Oh, really? Wow!
On purpose.
Is that why?
I just never. I said, I'll leave that. I don't know if I'll ever get a chance to do the AT, but I'm never going to do that just on purpose, just so I'll have that 9.2 section new to me. And that was really cool. I was so happy. And I had never climbed up on the sign before, ever.
Oh, you'd saved that for an AT. Oh, I didn't know that. Frankly, it's the picture everybody wants. And so whether you've done it just as a day hike or as a through hike, everybody wants that picture. But you've saved that especially for your through hike, have you?
Yeah. It was awesome to do that section by the big Niagara and Little Niagara Falls. Those were really flowing. That was cool. And that was my 72nd summit, but that was the first time I'd ever climbed up on the sign. So
that is absolutely remarkable. I got to tell you, man, you look at home there, your picture is amazing. But let's come back down. I see the picture. There was quite a lot of fog around. Now that seemed quite bright as well. So how did the day dawn?
Yeah, it was actually, it started out, it's called 50% chance of rain, but we wanted to do it continuous if we could. We had talked about, if there was a couple bad days in a row, we could always come to my house, but I didn't really want to come home, before I was finished. So we looked at the weather and said, let's just go for it. And it ended up being an awesome day. Now, it was really cold at the summit. It was in the 30s with the wind chill easily, because it was really chilly. Yeah.
Wow.
But we got up to, and again, I was with my group. My family went ahead, and they waited for us 2 hours at the summit in the freezing cold, hoping I'd get up there. But I had, my wife, my daughter, who's 4.5 months pregnant.
Oh my gosh, she did it.
Yeah, that was her 20th summit.
Wow.
Almost 4.5 months pregnant. And, and I had and you'll really appreciate this. So they get out of the car at the Katahdin Stream campground at the trailhead. Well, who jumps out of the car but Mike and Marla, Blaze Dog, and shows up, who were on your...
nice.
Yeah.
Nice. I remember Mike and Marla Hansen.
Yes. They drove all the way. They'd been hiking in the Adirondacks, and my son-in-law, James, had contacted them because I was there, me and my daughter, for Mike's summit with Marla when he finished the AT. And I couldn't believe it. I almost got emotional right there, right at the trailhead. It was just so nice of them to do that. It's just amazing.
It's quite remarkable how people go do the extra mile, don't they, to just support you and be there and want to spend time with you and give you food and stuff like that. It's just tremendous. So the day started. What time did you get up?
Well, we got up at, I don't know, 5. I usually wake up toward the last 2 or 3 months at 5:40, and
Right.
we had our Carnation instant breakfast for breakfast, and
Right.
I did boil my water because another amazing, just side note, we'd run into a section hiker who wasn't going to be able to use his lean-to reservation at Katahdin campground, so he gave it to me.
Oh, nice.
So we got to stay right there at the campground, which it's close to the Birches anyway, but we had our own personal lean-to, the 4 of us, and it was kind of hazy. And I'll tell you, by the time we were about halfway up Hunt Spur, before you hit the gateway there, it just cleared. And it was just amazing. And the top, I mean, like I said, it was cold. And then my friends, they were freezing to death. God love them. They said, Sloggy's not going to make it because he's here with his family. So I had told them to go down Knife Edge, and they had amazing views going across Knife Edge. Just epic.
Beautiful.
Way for them to finish. And then we came down, my wife and I and my daughters and everybody else. We had about 8 or 9 of us. We came down A-Ball Trail to finish.
Right.
But it was a long day because it's not really fair to be asking someone to hike with a thru-hiker right on the last 5 miles and keep up with them. So, but we went slow. We finished in the dark. I think it was about 11-hour day to get everybody down the trail, but everybody was there. No one got hurt. So worth it to have them all there. Yep, 100%.
So you say it was your 75th summit?
72nd.
72nd summit. Yeah. And the moment you touched, was that what were you thinking?
Oh, cried like a baby. It was very emotional.
Did you? Did you?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah. You've done it twice. It's just because the whole time almost you're thinking, at least for me, I'm like, I don't know if I can do it. And like you've said, one slip, one fall, other things outside of your control can happen, and to finish it and have my family there. I think that was really, emotional.
What
for
a
me
treat.
To have everybody make it. Yeah, it was incredible. Yeah.
What
incredible.
An absolute treat to have your family there with you. Well, look, you've done it. And I'm sorry I couldn't have followed you a bit earlier on your hike, but I always wanted to follow you. So I'm so glad we got to share some of the last miles with you. And you seemed so comfortable there all the whole time. Has this made you think about doing other things and other hikes, or are you kind of done now?
No, I don't know if I would do, because my wife was, awesome. Just all the way around, and until the last couple of weeks, I think she said she was kind of AT'd out, because it's, it's a lot of work. She did all the mowing and, keeping the house. She juggled a lot of balls, and I'm very thankful for her here. She kept things going. And so I don't think I'd ever do something like that, but Solar and I, my buddy that I hiked with all the way from, but near Corrado's Pizza there in New York. He and I hiked that whole last section. I don't even know how many hundred of miles that is, but it's a lot. We've talked about doing the Camino next summer.
Nice. That's a much more manageable thing.
Yeah, like a month-ish. And then my wife said, well, maybe if you do that, when you finish, I'll fly over and then we can, check out Spain for a week or something. I'm like, perfect.
Yeah.
That way she can see it too. So that's something like that. And I'm also going to start shuttling because I'm retired and I'm going to need something to do. So I'm going to start my own shuttle business between like Monson, the airport in Bangor that I live literally beside, and Millinocket, for Sobos and flip-floppers and just to stay in touch with the community, things like that. Just I love talking about the trail. So that'll keep me in touch with the community. So I'm going to try to start that in the next week here and finish out the season.
So what a treat it's been then to see this, this guy who's done this before and yet do it again. And it's so much more special when you do it and to be doing with your family. So that's great. Now, remember, I know people are going to roll their eyes at this. You got 3 weeks, just 3 weeks to tell everyone about it and then shut up because they don't want to hear anymore.
Yeah, I know. Well, I have been getting a lot of, so, I ended up, I think I had like 3 subscribers when I did my channel, my 2 daughters and my wife, but I've had like over 300 and like 330 people now. And people are reaching out to me like, hey, we want to see, because I couldn't upload any videos the last week.
Right.
So I got to work on my videos, and so they're all eager to watch those, and it's cool because I'll actually be able to watch the last week, like with my wife or kids, and we can kind of watch it together. So I'm going to work on my videos, and that'll be a lot of fun. And I might eke out maybe a little bit more than 2 weeks, but no, I know what you're saying. But I can always find other people that want to talk about the AT. So.
Of course. Now look, I'd like to circle back with you in about 2 or 3 months just to have a little recap up with all of you once you finish and just see how it's what your feelings are, because your feelings will change as time goes on. It's surprising how it kind of seeps into your soul even more once you're about 3 months in. But I just want to thank you for sharing your story with us as you've gone along, and I'm just so pleased you made it, and congratulations.
No, thank you very much, and it's been a pleasure. I mean, I'd listened to your podcast for over a year before, RTK and Bruce, and just that really got me excited about it. And the chance to get on was super exciting for me. So thank you for having me on. No,
I appreciate it. And we're going to catch up again, as I say, soon. All right?
Yep. Sounds good. Thank you.
Okay, buddy. Take it easy and enjoy the glory. Enjoy the glory.
I will. Thanks, Steve. You have a good day.
Cheers, man. Bye.
Yep. Bye-bye.
How wonderful for him it must have been to share those last few miles up Katahdin for the 72nd time with his family. I've been quite touched by how Sloggy's embraced this hike and his desire to give back while enjoying those last 2 states as he's been on his home turf. Must have been wonderful for him. Congrats again, mate. You made it. Before we hear from Michael, I want to bring on my friend Lady Di, Amina Sultan from Damascus. Here she is. So, I'm going to say hello to, I say an old friend now, but a friend I've known for 5 years. This is Lady Di, Diane Seeger. How are you?
I'm good. How are you? Yes, I am both old and an old friend.
Yeah, you got to be careful when you say these things, to men and women actually these days sometimes. But,
right.
I think us hikers are all getting older and older anyway on the trail. As I say, we met now 2019 through hikes, and we both finished. Happy days.
Yep, Nobo 2019.
How about that? And Nobo 2014 for miracles. So
that's right.
And I've stayed at your hostel because several times at trail days, and it's the hostel we want to talk about right now. I think we've had you on to talk about the hostel in the past, but I know you've got a bit of news about it. But we'll talk about that in a minute. So when did you decide you wanted to get involved in the hostel? Because I know you finished in 2019, so it's a relatively recent timescale.
Yeah, so the quick version is that I thru-hiked in 2019. I went home, got bored, decided I wanted to do some hiking. So I came to Damascus to do some section hiking and stumbled across a for sale sign in front of a big house. Bought it, moved here from Minneapolis, and opened Lady Di's Bed and Breakfast. It's a bed and breakfast with a hiker rate.
So hang on, how quick was it when you saw the sign outside that you wanted to buy it, that you actually bought it?
Well, I've never been in the hospitality industry in my life, so this was entirely an impulse thing. And actually, when I first saw it, I didn't even call the agent. I went home, and then I kept thinking about it. And then I came back to look at it, and as soon as I walked through it, I could just envision how it was a great layout for a hostel. And one thing led to another, and I was here a couple 3 months after that.
I mean, I know the atmosphere in the place. It's a magical place to be, especially your kitchen, by the way. I love your,
Thank you.
Your kitchen. There's always food and there's coffee and it smells great and people congregate. Despite smelly hikers being there, it always smells great. And I suppose this is probably a redundant question, but it's probably worth mentioning. Was part of it that connection back to the trail that you were missing when you were back in Minnesota?
Well, that was the entirety of it. I mean, like I said, I hadn't planned to go into the hospitality business at all, but I retired right before I thru-hiked. And then I went home, and then of course COVID hit, and that disrupted everybody's life. And so this was kind of something to do to get over, isolating for the first year of COVID. And I missed the trail so much. That's why I was here hiking. Yeah. It was all happenstance. Sometimes you're in alignment with the universe and things just fall into place.
Now, I am known by in my family as somebody who doesn't like dogs, but there are photos, because I was bitten by one. There are photos of me and Dookie and Duke.
That's right.
Your dog.
That's right.
I think with his head on my lap, and I'm stroking him, which is, that picture has not existed in any other form anywhere else in the world.
That's right. Well, he's the Duke of Damascus.
He is.
People have suggested he should run for town council.
He'd win.
And he's a great dog for a hostel. He doesn't protect. He doesn't bark. He doesn't do any of that stuff. He just loves people up. So everybody who lives in this house is royalty.
There you go. And apart from me, of course, have you had many other famous guests?
Well, the hiker community is amazing. I have had Olympic gold medalists.
Wow.
I've had retired surgeons or rocket scientists, many people from literally all over the world, really, that hike the trail. So it's a fabulous experience to live on trail.
And I had the pleasure and the privilege of meeting Nimble Nomad at your B&B.
That's right.
As well.
He's been here a couple of times.
I'm sure he has. So with all these good vibes about the place, and it is a great vibes about, but I love the place. I think it's a super part of the community. You're going to sell it. So what's going on?
Lady Dies is up for sale. I put it on the market about a week ago. So when I thru-hiked after I retired from regular work, and I'm going to be 70 on my next birthday, and I don't have the sort of the energy I used to have. And the other thing, when I bought this, I thought this is probably a 3 to 5 year project, and it's been 3.5 years. So I'm not selling it for any negative reason or because I don't like it. I also have adult children who are getting married, and I anticipate grandkids at some point. And so I never intended to. If I were 5 years younger, I'd probably do it for another 5 years. But it's time for a change, I think.
I think sometimes it's a bit like doing the thru-hike itself. Sometimes it's the right time, isn't it? And you take the opportunity and go through that window. And in this case of Lady Dies, you've done exactly that as well. So what's the status of the sale right now? Are people showing interest? Are people coming around to see it?
I've had a bit of interest. Nobody's, again, I think it's been about 8 or 9 days on the market. Right. And it's the fall. It's probably not the best time to put property on the market, and I've had some interest, but Nice. It is still for sale. I have no bids on it.
And so I remember staying in a room with about 5 beds. There's another couple. I can't remember how many beds you've actually got for hikers.
So let me just describe it. So the house is 2,750-ish square feet. It's got 5 bedrooms, 4 bathrooms. And I'm licensed for 18, and I have bed capacity for 18, but that includes some of the rooms it can be either private or flipped over to be a hostel kind of situation. And so I have a capacity of 18. The way I have run it, though, just because I've done it for myself, is I've always limited the capacity to about 10 or 11 people, because that's how many people fit around my kitchen table at the same time. Yeah. So I haven't run it trying to, make every penny I could. I've limited the number of guests I have.
Any, I'm about to say buyer's remorse, any seller's remorse? I mean, once you sign it, are you the person who can move on from something and leave it behind?
I can't tell you how ambivalent I am. I want it to sell and I don't want it to sell. And I am going to miss Damascus so much.
Sure.
So, the trail changed my life, even though I did it late in life. I don't know anybody who isn't somewhat changed by a thru-hike. And this has just been a fabulous time to kind of be back among the trail community. And in Trail Town, USA, in one of the best trail places in the world. So,
There's something particularly special about Damascus, and maybe it's trail days. I don't think it's only trail days. I loved being in Damascus when I was there anyway before trail days. So it's one of those places that's one of those iconic places, I guess, on the trail. Yep. So if people are interested and they would like to sort of look at it or find out more, are they to call you direct? They email you? I mean, what's the process?
Well, yeah, my phone number is everywhere, on Facebook, on my webpage, etc. but it's also on Zillow or Realtor.com.
All right.
The address is 217 Damascus Drive. There's only maybe 5 or 6 properties for sale in all of Damascus, so you could even look it up on the map.
All right. So 217 Damascus Drive. I'll put that in the show notes for you anyway.
Mm-hmm.
If you want me to, I'll share your phone number. Perhaps you don't want me to share that, so I won't.
Well, I've got it listed with the realtor,
okay.
and on the listing, that realtor's phone number is there as well.
So say you sell it, I don't know, 3 months time. Say 3 months time at that. What's next? What are you going to do next? I know you can't go and sit down in a house waiting for babies to arrive. It's not the way it happens.
No. Honestly, I might get away and do a little hiking. And this past August, I did a Boundary Waters trip, Boundary Water Canoe Area Wilderness back in Minnesota, nice. where I moved from. I'm going to do more of that. I think I'm going to get outside more. As wonderful as this business is, it keeps you busy.
I'm sure.
And then I'll decide. I guess I'll figure out the next steps.
That's right. Well, it's exciting times, and I'm sure the town and certainly the hiking community will be sorry to see you go, and I'll be sorry to see you go because I won't be able to see your smiling face when I come to Damascus Trail Days, or stay with it at least when I'm there next time. But look, I wish you all the very best in the world, and hopefully that some people who are interested in doing a hostel. I think you kind of have to be a hiker to love the hiking community to want to do this. But what you're getting and is a beautiful house. I've been in it several times. I love it. It's always clean, by the way. So whoever buys it, please keep it clean. So,
and I'm definitely hoping to sell it to somebody in the trail community that wants to continue a hostel. That's my goal.
Okay, Lady Di. Well, look, good to talk to you. Good to see you, and we'll catch up soon. And all very best luck in the world. And just keep in touch to let me know what happens. Okay.
Yeah. Best to you, Mighty Blue. Thank you.
Okay. See you then.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
Bye. Love Lady Di. She'll be missed from Damascus, and I always had a good time when I stayed with her in a beautiful home. If you haven't seen the place, you should check it out before it's sold. I invited her on because I'm kind of hoping that one of you who listens to this might just be tempted to take on the hostel, make yourself a bit of money, become part of the hiking community, and have a great time in the process. The place is great, and I can only wish Lady Di well. If you want to check out the place, you can find it on Zillow at 217 Damascus Drive, Damascus. I've actually put a link to it in the show notes. Our weekly thank you very much to our donors now. This week we have the following people to thank. Monthly donors Woody Bass, Natisha Webb and Ninka DeHuss stepped up again, while we also had nice donations from Chaz Sundling, who wrote, "Hi Steve, thanks. All the best, Chaz." Then from Alan Hansen, who wrote, "Thanks Steve for all you do for the hiking community. Your podcast is the highlight of my week." And finally, from Paul Chauvel. Thanks to each of you for your contribution to keeping things going. Now, with news of plans changed, here is Michael Gosh, or No Rush the Elder. I should warn you that the sound isn't great, but I wanted you to hear this from Michael. Here he is.
Hey, Steve, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. How are you, Michael?
I'm fine.
Actually, it's not very good sound. Where actually are you?
I'm at Starbucks.
Okay, that's better.
Lebanon.
That's okay. It's better now. Okay, no worries. Okay. Right, we're good. Well, I actually wasn't going to, Michael. I was going to have you and Sandra on next week and Bobby and David today because they were near the end. But you've got a bit of news to share, so I thought I'd jump on the phone and see what's going on.
Okay. Well, I had a really good last week. It was good mileage. I mean, the last part of Vermont is beautiful. It's probably my favorite part of Vermont. I mean, the Kent Pond and everything. And
beautiful.
And the hiking. And when it rained, it only rained at night. And then I made it into Hanover. And I was planning the logistics of chopsticks coming back to the trail. And I was going to up to Millinocket and reading all the stuff that they had written about, making it through the 100-mile wilderness and going through the whites and the presidentials, and how tough it was. And Southlanders have been telling me how tough it was, and I knew it was going to be tough. And then when I was here too, I talked to local hikers here, And I'm like, you know what? I'm not even, and I felt super, super rushed. And like I said, my name is No Rush. And I felt super stressed.
Yeah.
And I said, it was very gut wrenching. And I said, if something happens to Chopsticks, I wouldn't blame, I couldn't forgive myself. So
Sure.
I said, I'm not going to be selfish. I said, because where I've been, I could still kind of control stuff. If I got hurt, like Chopsticks got hurt, we got him back. We got him into the hospital, and he got home. But up there, it's a lot less forgiving. And if we got hurt or we got stuck somewhere and somebody had to come get us, that would also put everybody else in danger. And I said, you know what? I can't do that. I said, it's always going to be there. And so now the plan is, and I've talked to Chopsticks, he's going to fly to Boston. I am going to drive to Boston from here because I'm going to keep hiking until the 18th. And then have somebody shuttle me back here. I'll go pick him up in Boston, bring him back here. He'll start hiking. I'll go home, get my truck, and then I'm still going to slack pack him so that when we start again next year, probably about the middle of June, we'll both start from the same place here, and that way we will make it up to Katahdin in a decent time.
I tell you what, listen, I'm absolutely not trying to change your mind, but I would say that all the southbounders will say it's so tough because they got fresh legs. You've got 1,700 miles on your legs, if not more, actually. Right. So, you would have handled that better. But you know what? There's no point in going anywhere, climbing anywhere, if there's that concern in your mind. So why on earth would you do that? So I think, it's a brave decision to make. So I know how I could tell from the break in your voice just now, you struggled with it quite a bit. Are you becoming more comfortable with it now?
I am. I know in my heart it's the right decision, and it's the right decision for my family. It's the right decision for Dick's family. I mean, his wife thanked me so he was working, so it is the right decision. I mean, it's a decision I didn't want to have to make, right? But it's the right one for us.
Yeah. Well, look, I'm not gonna let you wallow in your grief any longer because I know you're feeling there's definitely a feeling of grief when people find they have to give up on what was their original dream. But you've done the right thing. You're making this plan, so you still got a plan. I love the fact you had a plan last week, and if that in your mind wasn't going to work, then you do something else, and you both come up with something. Now, is Chopsticks happy with this as well?
Oh yes, he was. At first, I could tell he struggled with it, but then I talked to him and his wife together last night, and they were both very happy with it.
Well, you know what? That's good enough.
Thank me profusely, so I'm very glad.
Yeah. Okay. Well, look, keep your chin up and still enjoy it. You're going to be you're now into New Hampshire now, so you've crossed the Connecticut River, I presume, that bridge. Yeah. So you're going into New Hampshire. Well, how far do you think you're going to get in the next? Is it another week? You're going to be up there hiking?
Right. I'm going to get over. I'm going to try to get over 1,800 miles. So.
Right. So you've got some good stuff coming up anyway, and it give you a bit of a flavour. You'll probably reach the Whites, won't you?
I may. Yeah. I don't know. I said I'm going to hike till the 18th. And okay. I'm staying at a hostel on the 13th, and they do slack packing, so I may just slack pack.
Yeah, do that. Just, this is such a, I think you found this out since you've been out there, and I think everybody does when they go out there. This isn't what we expected it to be. None of us expect it to be as it is. It's just such a shock to the system anyway, and it keeps throwing things at you, and you have to adapt to those changes, and you've adapted those changes, and I think some people carry on where they absolutely shouldn't carry on, and that causes problems down the line for some of them. So the fact you've made this decision, I'm totally I'm proud of you, because it isn't an easy decision to make. So, sitting in Starbucks on the phone to a fat bloke like me, really, it's it's kind of it must be a pretty sad thing to be doing. But you know what? You get out of Starbucks. I know exactly the Starbucks you mean, by the way, because I stopped there for an hour or so myself when I went in 2014. So just pull yourself together, get your coffee down, and then get out there and get walking again, and just enjoy it. Just relish in the fact that you're in a beautiful part of the world, and you're going to have a great day's hiking. Okay.
Oh, I will. Like I said, when I finally made the decision, it was like a big weight was lifted off my heart. And I said,
Good.
You know what? It's the right thing.
And what about your wife? Is she on board with that as well?
Oh yes, she is.
Yeah. So. Okay, man. Well, look, stay strong, stay safe, and just enjoy the hike now. Just have fun with it, because you've been looking forward to hiking again with chopsticks. You're going to be doing that, so just carry on and just enjoy the whole thing. Okay.
I will. Thank you, my friend.
Okay, buddy. You take it easy, all right, and enjoy it.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Cheers then. Bye. Do you know, his reasoning was so on point. He made the right choice for him and his hiking partner. Yes, he may have made it, but he chose to finish the adventure with chopsticks as opposed to risking it by himself. It's that kind of selfless attitude that resonates with me, and I'm sure many of you have gone through a thru hike. You could tell that he was hurting, no question about that. Yet he was at peace with the decision, and just as important, Chopstick and his family felt the same way. Good call, guys. Finally today, Emily reaches Hot Springs and takes full advantage of the town's main attraction, the Springs. I'll see you next week. Chapter 10. We Are Family. I slept in on Easter Sunday. I slept so well that Bruce was up way before my eyelids considered flickering. I don't usually sleep soundly, but that night I did. It amazed me how difficult it was for me to fall asleep and stay asleep on the trail. I've never been a good sleeper, but I'd hoped that it would be different out on the trail. I thought I'd be exhausted from hiking. That wasn't the case. I still wasn't getting the rest I needed, so I was grateful for the shut-eye I received that night. This was the first Easter we did not celebrate with our sons. They were home while Bruce and I were away. I'd already missed Bruce and Patch's birthdays, and I would later miss Stephen's 21st birthday celebrations. Now I wasn't home for Easter. We had left them alone to fend for themselves. Stephen was 20 and Patch was 19. Not exactly kids, but they were not out on their own either. We would have no sunrise breakfast at church and no traditional Easter egg basket for them or our family meal with everyone at the house. It was just me and Bruce in our hotel. Our day was filled with ordinary hiker chores of resupplying, repacking, laundry and bathing. I was very spoiled in this department. Bruce tended to my every need. He was the best support a hiker could have. He did my laundry, drove me around as needed, got my food, figured the next section's logistics, and even gave me foot rubs. Most of the time I didn't even have to ask. He would be one step ahead of me and would have what I needed before I even requested it. Bruce was my hero on this trip. I had spent the last 25 years tending to his needs while he was the breadwinner for our family. But now he was spoiling me, and the roles were reversed, kind of. He was still the money-making machine, but he was also the domestic god. 0 days were always too short, and before I knew it, it was time to hit the trail again. Later in the hike, I found the best 0 day was preceded by a Nero day, so all chores could be done upon arrival that first day. Then I'd have a full day to rest and or enjoy whatever the town had to offer. But this time had been just a regular 0 day, filled with chores. I was back on the trail about 8:30 a.m. the next morning, and it was a very slow start. It took me a long time to get back the hiking momentum after such a nice 0 day. My pack was loaded with extras, 3 pounds of tangerines and 2 pounds of jelly beans to share with other hikers at the shelter that night. I often carried extra treats to give away. It was more weight, but the enjoyment it brought to other hikers was worth the burden. But this was not a good day to be carrying an extra 5 pounds. 15 miles were between Roaring Fork Shelter and myself when I started out that morning on April the 6th. I started at 1,775 feet, then climbed to 4,263 feet, dropped back down to 2,929 feet, up to 3,855 feet, down to 3,500 feet. Then I pushed up and over Max Patch at 4,629 feet and finished at the shelter at 4,036 feet. I was on top of Max Patch when the temperature started dropping and clouds rolled over the top of the bald mountain. I saw the ominous formations way off in the distance and prayed they just looked bad and would not be anything more than that. Being the cautious soul that I am, I hurried off the open bald as quickly as I could, just in case Mother Nature had other ideas. As she did. The clouds thickened and darkened as the breeze picked up. I did not want to be in the open if lightning accompanied the approaching storm. I hastily descended Max Patch to the safety of the woods. I continued my brisk pace to try and beat the rain to the shelter. I wanted to stay dry. During that hurrying, I failed to keep an eye out for white blazes and just let the trail lead me on. Unfortunately, it led me to a dead end. When I realised my error, I turned round, only to be closed in by the forest. I realised I wasn't even following a trail. My fear of being wet was immediately replaced by fear of being lost. Turning around and seeing no sign of a trail made my throat close. I felt a panic attack rising quicker than yeast in a hot oven, and that ball of dough in my throat was choking my air supply. Not only was I going to be caught in a storm of my own, I was now lost. My first reaction was to run as fast as I could in the direction I thought I'd come, but from somewhere deep within, a soft voice said, "Breathe." So I did, and the dough lost some of its puffiness. I went to run again. I heard, "Breathe." I breathed again, and the dough decompressed a little more. One more time I heard, "Breathe." Again I listened, and the dough collapsed. Had I just stopped a panic attack? I was puzzled. I was lost. A possibly dangerous storm was almost on me, and I was okay with all that. Wow. Let's add, I was proud of myself too. So what now? I slowly examined the woods and noticed I was in a small clearing that may have once been a campsite. Taking my time and making sure I took notice of landmarks, I slowly worked my way back in the direction I felt I had come. After what seemed like eternity, I did find a trail, but it was not the AT. I followed it back using the clouds. The sun wasn't out, but I remembered the direction the clouds were moving in relation to the trail as I was descending the mountain. There it was. In my frenzy to get off the open bald of Max Patch, I'd missed the double white blaze that noted a turn, and I'd gone half a mile into the woods on another trail that slowly dead-ended into nothing. It was a long day of puds and a wrong turn, all while carrying an extra 5 pounds. When I arrived at the shelter and emptied my load of fruit and sweets, it was met with gratitude by the other hikers. The heavy burden soon was forgotten. After sharing my goods and having my own dinner, I claimed a spot in the shelter, changed into my warm wool PJs, then climbed into my sleeping bag. I wanted to retain what warmth I had before the weather got any colder. It was still too early to sleep, so I just sat up and socialised with the other hikers. No bag dancing this time. Way back at the beginning of the hike, I'd met another Andrew and Armaeus, a hiker and his dog. They showed up now. Andrew was about to tie Armaeus to a tree so he could cook his dinner. I offered to hold Armaeus so the dog would not feel abandoned, and Armaeus showed his gratitude by crawling headfirst into my zipped-up sleeping bag. He was by no means a small creature, a Doberman, easily weighing 90 pounds. It was quite cosy for me as well. He was like a little furnace. When Andrew was finished cooking his supper, he called his companion. Armaeus ignored him. I had to unzip my bag and push him out. I felt as reluctant as the dog. I would have been quite content to have the furry companion to cuddle with during that damp, chilly night. The clouds were kind and did not dump their payload until night time, when everyone was safe and dry in the shelter or their tents. Then the weather was still amiable, and the rain stopped just before sunup. I was glad I was in the shelter. I'd been on the trail for just 2 days short of a month, and I was already tired of packing up a wet tent. It wasn't necessarily the wetness that was so bad. It was the cold morning air that made it so difficult. My fingers and hands would stiffen up and ache, making the simple chore of packing miserable. 7.5 miles into the morning, right after Bluff Mountain, it began to rain and did not stop until just before Hot Springs. It was another wet, soggy day on the Appalachian Trail. By now, I had forgotten how many days and nights it had rained. I quit counting. I recalled Paul Stutzman stating in his book, Hiking Through, that the year he hiked the AT had been the wettest year ever. I was beginning to wonder if this year might outdo his. Not only did it rain, those dark clouds I saw on top of Max Patch caught up to me and produced more than just precipitation. The storm was accompanied by thunder roaring and lightning flashing in the distance, not too close, but close enough to have me singing Hail Marys and hiking a little faster than I safely should have. Hot Springs was one of my favourite little towns. The trail dumps you out of the woods onto Bridge Street, which should be called Main Street because everything is on that street. The 2010 census reported the population to be a whopping 560. Hot Springs isn't what you would call a booming town, but it was full of friendly faces and great hospitality. Before arriving in this little hiker sanctuary, I received a text from Carl asking of my whereabouts and ETA into Hot Springs. He and Walking Man secured a slot for a mineral bath at the famous Hot Springs Hot Tubs and wanted to know if I wanted to join them with their other friends. Hot Springs is known for just that, hot springs of natural mineral water heated deep within the earth. Legend has it that the crystal clear carbonated waters and mineral content have healing powers. It's been a resort destination since the 1800s. Native Americans were the first to discover the rich waters. Then, as word spread, the sick and lame from the early colonies came. In Hot Springs, President Andrew Johnson's son, Frank, met his bride, the daughter of the hotel owner, Bessie Rumbo. Today, the resort pipes the waters into jacuzzi tubs set in private outdoor settings overlooking a stream. When I received Carl's text, I had no time to spare. I was 15 minutes out and they were already in the tub. Originally, I was going to stop at the hostel to dump my gear and wash off the day's rain and mud before exploring the one-road town, but there was no time for such tasks. The clock was ticking and I wanted to see my friends and enjoy a mineral bath before their scheduled time had expired. I arrived at the check-in desk and asked where the showers were. They told me a shower was not necessary. Really? Was my reply. I thought to myself, how disgusting is that? They assured me a shower wasn't needed and my friends had not showered either. One of the friendly staff escorted me to the secluded bathing area. I had no swimsuit, but neither did my friends. My smart wool undergarments would have to do. It was reassuring how these fellow hikers, who I had known less than a month, were like family. I felt no reservations about undressing to my base layer in front of these guys. Out on the trail, friendships and bonds build quickly and easily. I found people for the most part were not judgmental and were very accepting of others. We all came from different walks of life, different socio-economic statuses and various religious beliefs, but out there we all had a common goal, to seek the woods and whatever it had to offer. Modesty was set aside in a very respectful manner. There were no his or her bathrooms or locker rooms. The wilderness was one big gender-neutral space. The only privacy one had was their own tent or the diverted eyes of fellow hikers as you did what you needed to do. Modesty was just something hikers didn't worry about. The soak in the healing waters did as much for the mind as it did for the body, and it was well timed for an event that was spur of the moment. If I had done my chores first, I may not have ventured back out to explore the spa. After the hot tub, I headed to Elmer's hostel to check in. It was an old house, complete with antiques, dust, and the smell of my grandmother's attic. The place was clean other than the dust. I don't like to dust either, so I felt right at home. When I arrived, Elmer and his helper were in the kitchen preparing supper. It smelled delightful. I would not be staying for it, though. I had plans to meet with the guys at the local pub. Bruce had left a food box for me. I extracted it from the disarrayed pile of other packages waiting to be claimed. Opening it was so mundane. I wish I would have slipped in a few treats as a surprise. Food was fuel, and the treats would have to come when Bruce was around or from unexpected trail magic. I was reorganising my pack when I noticed a couple of silver insects on the nightstand. I picked them up, squished them, and put them in the trash. I found another one and did the same. No big deal. It was early spring and bugs were beginning to find their way inside. The room had poor lighting, so I pulled the curtain back to allow in some sunshine. When I did, several more of these insects fell to the nightstand. I examined the back of the curtain closer and it was covered with them. This was more than I could handle. I went down to Elmer and asked if someone could remove the curtain and dispose of the critters. The dust may not have bothered me, but the creepy crawling things clinging to the curtain next to my bed had me reconsidering my stay in this historic bed and breakfast. Laundry was next. I took a shower after packing my food bag, then walked to the laundrette. It was 5 o'clock when I put my load of hiker filth into the machine and noticed a Mexican grill next door. I like tacos even more than burgers and fries. Should I go or should I stay? Dinner plans were at 6 o'clock with Walking Man and Carl, but that was an hour away, and I was starving. My 2 tacos were a great way to pass the time as my clothes were being washed. While they dried, I called a reporter from a Maine newspaper back home who was writing an outdoor piece on Mainers hiking the Appalachian Trail. I entertained her with my experiences so far and let her know about Carl and Walking Man, since they were also from Maine. It took me a while for my appetite to develop. At first, I didn't experience the ferocious hiker hunger everyone talked about. I gave lots of my food to Andrew in the beginning, especially the oatmeal. I didn't like to cook in the morning. My goal was to get on the trail as fast as possible. If I did cook at supper time, I hardly finished my meal. I would eat half, then share with Andrew. When Andrew went home, Carl gladly became the recipient of my leftovers. But by Hot Springs, the hunger was in full force. I had no problem eating a taco appetizer, then finishing my 3-course meal at the pub, complete with a couple of adult beverages. The bar was full of other hikers seeking a night off the trail. I ran into Benji, a nice guy I had met way back in the Smokies and hiked with a few times. He was having some ankle issues and was going home. It was dark when we left the pub, so he offered to walk me back to Elmer's, making sure I was safe. Most hikers were like that. I didn't need protecting, especially in the friendly town of Hot Springs, but it was nice to know chivalry was not dead. The healing waters worked their magic on me that night. I laid my head on the pillow and I zonked out. When I woke up the next morning, I was in the exact position as when I fell asleep. Another great night's sleep, compliments of a real bed and pillow. I liked the routine of hiking a few days in the woods, then sleeping inside. The wonderful night of rest made for an easy day of hiking, and my original plan of 11 miles for the next day was stretched to 15. I made it all the way to Allen Gap, mile 289.2.